Welcome back, guys. We're here with Joe Galante and we're very pleased to have him aboard. Joe, mate, we've talked a lot about the start of your career. Let's talk a little bit about the end of your career with the record labels. And in leaving, there was a quote that you said, as a 21-year-old kid from Queens starting out at RCA Records in New York, I never dreamed of nearly a 40-year journey that was before me. In 1974, a temporary Nashville assignment turned permanent and it changed my life. I thank God for it every day. It is my sole decision to leave and I'm excited to begin a new journey. But Nashville is my home and will continue to be. I know that you moved here when you were very young, and to a place that you kind of wanted to move away from pretty quickly.
Very true.
But you obviously found a home in Nashville. Right. And it does tend to have that effect on a lot of people. But tell me about that. How you know, obviously you had to stay because of work, but you don't have to stay now.
Right. And to a large degree, when I made that decision, it was really the music that drew me because I started hanging with Ronnie Milsap, who became a very dear friend, and we worked together for some 25 years, and the same was true of Waylon and Dolly. And I found these three different sounding artists, but each with a character and an original sound to them, and fell in love. I absolutely fell in love. Mm-hmm. I looked forward to coming to work every day and devoted my time to what I could do to make them bigger and better because I thought, you know, your ego takes over and it's like, if I like this, everybody should like this.
So was there something more than music you saw in these people?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the songs and the way they performed because you couldn't talk about, I mean, if you think about Dolly and just the costuming, and then you think about Waylon and the grit, mm-hmm. and then you think about Ronnie and the soul, they were three separate entertainers, but absolutely loved every second one, and I was able to go to do so many different things with them. But all of a sudden the music became cool to me. Mm-hmm. And it was something that I knew that I could sink my teeth into and I could promote and market to everybody that I had worked with and wanted more people to hear. So it gave me the vehicle to start going out and trying new things. And I think that was a lot of what became my success, is that I looked at these artists that we would have and said, okay, I need to do things differently than we were done. Because we just stayed in Nashville, and if it happened, it happened. Mm-hmm. You know, that was pretty much it. And my attitude was, no, we got to take these folks and we got to bring them to New York and we got to bring them to LA and, you know, do videos on them when nobody was doing videos. And then, you know, 25 years later, I was a guy against the videos. But I mean, it was, let's try things. Yeah. I mean, you know, how do we get people to see this and how interesting could it be? And it was interesting also at the same time that, you know, the Europeans, to a large degree, loved those three acts. And so we started to develop a little bit of an international market back in the 70s and early 80s mm-hmm. for these guys. And, you know, did the same thing a lot of the acts are doing now, playing clubs and small theaters, but nothing really took off because, as you know, in most of the world, you have to have a radio hit. Yeah. And it wasn't until we really had Dolly on 9 to 5 and Here You Come Again that we started to get radio hits in some parts of the world. But you know, with Milsap, I was able to take my pop background and cross records over. With Waylon, I was able to realize, you know, when he was working on Dukes of Hazzard, you know, to take the TV show, and then he worked with, of all things, Big Bird on a Sesame Street film that we took the soundtrack mm-hmm. and tried that. It was about experimentation for us. We kept looking at, you know, the group that I was working with at the label, all the folks and myself, how do we love this so much, how do we get more people to love it? Yeah. And that's all it was. Yeah. And little by little, it led us to more fans, and then we had radio stations come along the way. And it started to open up. It was a very slow go for a long period of time.
Mm. Well, Jody Williams, who's Vice President of BMI, he says, here's a quote here that says, "There's probably never been a guy in the history of the Nashville record business that has given more artists a shot." And to go through some of those artists, which are so many, and I have to say this because, as I said, there'll be people who don't know your background, but I mean, Alabama, Carrie Underwood, Keith Whitley, Chris Young, the Judds, Martina McBride, Kelly Pickler, Jake Owen, Lone Star, Sarah Evans, to name a few. You've helped Miranda Lambert, Brooks and Dunn, Montgomery Gentry, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers. Like, anyone we've ever heard of, you've had something to do with, I would definitely say. But you must have had to say no to a lot too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there are always two unpleasant parts of that job. One is to say no when you're trying to sign somebody, and the other one was to drop them.
Right.
You know, and that's never an easy situation, but there's a funny story. At the old RCA building, which is now Javelina Studios, I actually went into the men's room, and as I was in there, I heard Waylon in the stall next to me, and, you know, Waylon goes, "Hoss," he said, "Jesse's getting free. What do you think about her coming over here?" And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I got a handful right now, and I'd have Jesse and Waylon together. Now, this is all happening in the men's room. And I said to him, you know, Waylon, I think we're good where we are right now, and I've got some females I'm working on, and I don't want to put her at the back of the line. He said, okay, Hoss. And I mean, the entire time I'm like, there are beads of perspiration, but he's in the stall and he can't see me, you know, because I don't want to piss him off. But it's just those kind of things where, you know, you have to think quickly on your feet because it's not the right decision for the company. And it wasn't the right decision for Jesse either at the same time.
Well, I mean, and let's talk about that because that is difficult. I know, you know, you can fall in love with artists, you can fall in love with the music, but you're still essentially the CEO of a company who has to make decisions, commercially viable decisions, so that everyone can still fulfill what they want to try and achieve.
You know, it was interesting. I know you brought up independent artists, and actually it relates to the question you have right now. The companies in this town that are out there are built for volume. They're not built for nurturing on a small level. And when I tell an artist to come in, I always say to them, you know, what are your expectations? And normally we used to meet in a room, small room, and the artist would come in and sing acoustically. And on the wall would be platinum, multi-platinum, gold records, whatever was there. And, you know, if you want to be part of this, you're at the right place. But if you don't want to be part of this, you're at the wrong place. And there was an artist, Catherine Britt, from Australia that came in, and she actually said to me, and we were excited about her. She said, I don't know if I want to be part of this. And I said, well, you need to kind of make up your mind, because if you want to be part of this, I can do this. If you don't, go someplace else. And we had a similar experience with Jim Lauderdale, where he came in and did 30,000 units on an independent label, and then he came to us because we were really excited about him. Great singer-songwriter. And we did, I don't know, we must have spent 800 grand taking him around the country, doing everything, introducing him, blah, blah, blah. And everybody told him how much they loved his songs, but never played his music. And we did 30,000 units. The guy that did 30,000 units on the independent label made money. We lost a fortune. And it, you know, it was a lesson to myself that, you know, that's not something we do well. And that's not what most people do well in this town. They are built for volume. And they can spend time building something. The first time we did a Sarah Evans record, we sold 25,000 copies. But we saw pockets where we could take this to another level. The first record we did on Kenny Chesney did about 150 or 175,000. Same thing. We saw pockets that we could build on. And that's what we need, is to be able to realize ultimately that we could grow these acts to people that you would say them and everybody, oh, you were involved with so-and-so. What you didn't say was the probably 400 people sitting in the vault that I signed that nobody ever heard of. That those masters are there and nobody's going to talk about. And, you know, I'll run into them in the street and they'll go, hey, thanks for the shot. You know, well, that and $1 million, yes, you got the shot. You know, but that's the balance of the issue. And you have to be right. And when you're right, you've got to be right in a big way.
Well, I mean, I can see that some people have tried to spread the risk as the labels have changed. I want to talk a little bit about how the things that labels did do well and probably aren't doing so well at the moment. But I can see, like, a Big Machine, for instance, will have groups underneath, and they've kind of said, well, we're only going to have 4 artists on this particular label. I know Broken Bow's done it as well. They've got Stony Creek, and now Red Bow, I guess, is the other one. So I can see that they're trying to nurture these artists to some extent by having 4 or 5 artists on one label and a team around them, 4 or 5 artists here and a team around them, as opposed to just a big team looking after what essentially, I mean, you go with what's the most popular at the time, I imagine, when it's like that.
But the reality is that concept was something I brought back from New York. When we set up the RCA label group, we had RCA and B&A, and we started out with about 8 acts each. And then we realized that we couldn't handle that many. And the idea was you'd have one central team that did all your administration, and then one team for each label that would do promotion, and a marketing team behind that. And so that was the first label group that ever opened up in the town.
Right.
So everything you were talking about followed that concept. And then when we added Arista and Columbia, what we did was, and I realized the most we could do on any label was carry 5 to 6 acts, because radio would not allow us to have more than 4 to 5 at a time on each label. And if we did, we were controlling somewhere around 35 or 40% of the charts. And people got pissed off about it, you know. I wasn't, but I mean, you know, that's just the name of the game. So, and it's a math problem more than anything else, because if you get beyond that and you start carrying 8 or 9 per label, you can't get these people out.
Yeah, right.
Because if you're successful, then you're working 3 singles by Carrie Underwood, 3 singles by Brad Paisley, 3 singles by Alan Jackson, 3 singles by Brooks and Dunn, and then you've got the new person you're trying to get through.
Sure.
And then maybe you can get a second one through. So that gives you 6. If you're on 7, somebody's sitting in the wings waiting. So that's why you have to watch that. And then at the same time, the other part is, from a business standpoint, how much money can you really spend behind each of those acts?
Right. Yeah, I just mean they have to get to a point where they're carrying themselves or paying the company back. So
Absolutely.
You're dead right. We'll be right back with Joe Galante, and we're going to talk about music discovery and how that's changed. So we'll see you guys soon.